So good morning, everyone. So today we are doing chapters 6 through 8 in Buy Back Your Time. I think these were my most favorite chapters of the whole book. So chapter 6 was cloning yourself, Casey, which we just talked about. Chapter 7 is building playbooks, which I think was probably my biggest takeaway when I read this book the first time. And then chapter 8 was your perfect week. So let's start on chapter 6. So chapter 6 is cloning yourself. So on page 100, he goes back to talking about when he was on the ski trip with Richard Branson and was talking with his assistant that had came with him. And so he said, Hannah went on to tell me what she did for Branson, everything, how she did it according to his system, and how he monitored her activities, which is syncing every morning at breakfast. So he says, everybody who screams and begs for Richard's attention gets a gentle block and tackle from Hannah. With her, Branson has no got a second meetings and no just real quick interruptions. Hannah manages Branson's life according to his rules, not the demands of others. And I think this is so huge and was so beneficial for me when I started hiring my first VAs and using my business phone number for them to answer and not giving out my personal cell phone number. And I think when I am feeling stressed and I'm feeling like I'm being pulled in a million directions, it's because I gave my client my personal cell phone number. So like a lot of referrals that I get from Matt from Element Vacation Homes, he gives them my personal number and we text back and forth. And what I found is I then have trouble, like my admins will miss things that go on my personal cell phone because they don't have access to it. And I'm sharing screenshots and I'm constantly getting all the dings and the pings and everything else. So that was probably one of the best things that I ever did was having my admin manage my business line and then guarding my personal cell so that I'm not getting bothered all the time. But then on page 101, he goes on to say, here's the truth. If you want to see your business explode, if you want to truly apply the buyback principle, hiring an assistant is non-negotiable. It's the first hire every entrepreneur should make. Every hour you spend on admin tasks, answering emails, managing your calendar, calling the gardener, paying bills, etc., is an hour robbed from your business, family, and dream life. So then he goes on to say, so return to your time and energy audit from chapter 4. Look at everything you highlighted with a red highlighter, which I guess is all of yours, Casey, and that has only $1 or $2 signs. If you haven't got rid of everything yet, ask yourself, what from the list could I give to an administrative assistant? I thought this was so funny and so true. So a couple examples that he gives is the first one is baggage-free execution. Administrative assistants have the benefit of executing without the mental and psychological hangups that may make it difficult for you to execute. For instance, it's sometimes hard to bite the bullet and pay a huge invoice that you need to pay. Other times you may not want to schedule the meeting that you know requires a tough conversation. Your administrative assistant doesn't have this emotional baggage, so they're not going to procrastinate on it. And then going by the book, I think my virtual assistants probably test me on this every single day. So it says, similar to executing without baggage, your administrative assistant will also follow rules better than you will. For instance, say you have a rule that you don't accept projects less than $10,000 because you've done the math, and anything less than that will cost your company in the long run. When a $6,000 project runs through, you, the founder, will be so tempted to go ahead and take it, you'll probably make excuses or find a way to make it work. Your administrative assistant won't have that problem. They'll just respond politely. I'm so sorry, we aren't a great fit. Here are some other options. And then the next one he says is no more ball dropping. No one will guard your time like an administrative assistant will, keeping you on track and focused. I think a good example for this for me is if somebody calls and they want to talk to me, they will always just take a message. And so that way I am following up and calling people back on my time versus dropping whatever I'm in the middle of to answer it. I also think it frees up a lot of my time, which I think I don't know where at in this, somewhere in this that we'll go over today. It talks about multitasking and how hard it is to go back and forth from subject to subject. So when my phone is constantly not dinging, I'm pinging and I'm checking it, I'm focused and I'm doing, whatever I need to do based on my calendar, which I think is so important. And it says the two things that an administrative assistant should do for you is manage your calendar and manage your inbox. So he suggests he has like a really good system that he has set up that's on page 107 for how his administrative assistants mark his inbox. So he has like 7 different folders on page 108. One with an exclamation point with his name next to it, which are important things that come in that he needs to review. A folder that he needs to respond to, a folder to review, a folder that is responded, like the admin assistants have responded to, so he can go in and review those. Things that are waiting on, receipts and financial, and then newsletters. What I have, I don't know, probably in the last couple months, because like Rhea manages my KFRE inbox, and then Carmela manages my French Family Foundation and Danbury Breakers that I'm the HOA president for. And so the system that we came up with, I'm going to share with you my calendar. I haven't had a lot of time on my calendar this morning yet, but if you look at the bottom, so the bottom, anything that's highlighted, anything that has an exclamation point is something that I need to work on. Something with a green check mark is something that has come in that my admin can handle. And then once they handle it, they file it. And then something in yellow is I've responded to it and I'm waiting for a response back from whoever I responded to. And since we're talking about this, I think it was such a great tip that my coach had given me earlier in the year is like sometimes when my inbox has like a ton of emails, like I haven't gone through it yet this morning. So this is what's in my inbox. But at the end of the day, I feel so much more accomplished when my inbox is completely empty. And the way that I do that is, I'll give you an example. So this is School Cash Online. It's something I need to pay for AJ's upcoming field trip. So what I normally would do is I would go to my calendar and I would say, okay, today, or let's say today's Thursday, and I'm looking at tomorrow's calendar. So tomorrow, KJF is personal items. So tomorrow at 7:30 a.m., I'm going to go through and handle all my personal tasks. So then I would go back into my inbox and I would go up on this one and I would snooze it for Friday at 7:30 a.m. That way it gets it out of my inbox for right now and it pops up in my inbox when I'm going to be working on the tasks. So I have become a huge proponent of using the snooze button to remind me of when I need to do things. And then it gets it out of my inbox so that I'm constantly not scanning my inbox trying to figure out the things I have to do or the things that I don't have to do. So those 2 tips with with important things, coding it this way, and also snoozing things to when I'm going to do it on my calendar, frees up a ton of headspace and it helps me to not miss deadlines. So hopefully a couple of those tips help you guys. All right, moving on. I love this. He says on page 110, he's talking about his friend Jonathan was selling his business and he was stressed out because his assistant was going to be going with the business, or so he has assumed. And he was talking about how the last thing he wanted to do was start over with another assistant. And Dan calls him, well, I guess the author from Never Eat Alone, Keith Ferrazzi, says, don't think of them as secretaries or assistants. In fact, they are associates and lifelines, which all of my VAs are truly lifelines for me. So that was a quick recap of chapter 7. So the main 3 step into the arena if you currently have an assistant is ensure they're handling your inbox and calendar. Tell them to set up the email GPS system or some kind of system that works for you, and then hand over anything else that's in your delegation quadrant that you can. Any comments on chapter 6?
Yeah, you don't want to see my email box.
I probably don't, because just from you saying that, my heart rate went up a little bit. I
I
know a lot of
started
people
using
that
the
use,
snooze last
oh,
week.
yeah,
The tip that you gave, the snooze,
yeah.
I started using it last week with the top agent email. So yeah, it works for me.
I think because I was just getting overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that was in my inbox. And like, I used to just leave everything in my inbox that, like, as a reminder of things that, I was going to have to look at or going to have to do. And I was talking with my coach one day and I'm like, I just feel like all of that stuff being in my inbox is like, I also have to store it in my head. And then when I'm like trying to figure out what I need to do, I'm going into my inbox and I am trying to figure out like what's next. But I feel like I'm constantly, hold on, I'm going to get out of my, okay. The phone was ringing in my ear. Um, so I feel like I'm constantly scanning my inbox and trying and thinking about what I need to do next versus there's there's a whole chunk that I'm not thinking about when it's like a relief almost because I know if it's out of my inbox, I've snoozed it and it's going to come up when I need to deal with it. And so it just frees up so much of that headspace. But I do know a lot of people who will use their email inbox just as a searching tool and that that it's in there somewhere and you can search and find it when you need it. And I am not that person, but if you're that person and it works for you, good for you. All right, chapter 7, building playbooks. Um, I think this was the biggest takeaway that I got out of reading this book the first time is that, as I am growing and expanding the number of virtual assistants that I have, there was a time where I felt like we were just repeating everything every single time. And maybe we would hire a virtual assistant and they would last like 60 days. And then, they didn't work out and we had to hire someone new. And then Ria was just retraining them all over again, doing the same exact things, spending a lot of time doing that. And I love how he explains building a playbook as McDonaldizing your life. Because if you think about it, that's really what McDonald's has done, right? They just came up with a set of playbooks and they're able to duplicate it over and over and over again very easily. And that's why today we can go into pretty much, I mean, not that I've been into a McDonald's in a while, but you could probably go into any McDonald's and it all works very much the same way, regardless of which one you're in. And he says most companies call these documents SOPs or standard operating procedures. He calls them playbooks. And something I highlighted was when applied to a company as a whole, playbooks unlock scale. So again, he talks about your playbook system is going to grow over time. So he suggests starting out with one playbook in the very place that you're having the most pain. And he kind of breaks it down into the 4 C's of a playbook on page 118. Um, Keep in mind, he was trying to use the letter C for everything. So the first one is the camcorder method, which I don't even know if anybody has camcorders anymore, but that's our training videos. And then an actual course, which is steps involved in the process, the cadence, which is how often those tasks should be completed, monthly, weekly, daily, etc. And then the checklist, which is high level items that must be completed every time. So, when I was reading through this book earlier this year, that's kind of what I had tasked Riyadh with is, we've always had them, but oftentimes we'll do them and then our process changes or we do something a little bit differently. So she was kind of tasked to go through, update the ones that need to be updated. And we kind of changed up a way that we did it a little bit. So how he suggests starting out is like when you do the camcorder method, he has 2 quick tips. The first one is talking is the key. So as you're recording the video, make sure that you're talking through and walking through each step that you're doing. And he suggests making 3 recordings of it. So the first, the second, and the third time you do it, make a recording each time, because each time you do it, you're going to do it a little bit differently. And then for the course, all you're doing is documenting the high level steps. So you create a bulleted list of all of the high level steps for each task that's in your playbook. So he gives examples. Number 1, clock in. Number 2, turn on the espresso machine. Number 3, start the coffee pot. Number 4, write the copy of the day on the chalkboard. And then he's probably going to have actual videos of each one of those on how you turn on the espresso machine, how you start the coffee pot, so that you can hand that off to someone and they should be able to pretty much go through them and do them effectively. Or if it's something that's not done all of the time, they can go back and rewatch it as needed. And what I love on here, he has another reminder that 80% done is 100% awesome. So having someone else do it and do it maybe only at 80% is okay. Something I had to tell myself this a lot, like when my friends started coming in the mornings to help us with laundry. She doesn't do laundry like I do, and I have to be okay with that because she's doing it and I'm not doing it. So her doing it 80% of how I would do it, I need to be happy with that. And so I just have to remind myself if something's not done how I would do it, I'm like, I didn't have to do it and I'm good with that. So when you had someone working with you, Casey, did you have any sort of playbook set up or how did you do your training?
I had a playbook and we worked very closely together. So we were like face to face a lot. So I was able to do a lot of in-person training, kind of like the him driving the car rather than taking the 1 hour flight,
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
how I trained. But I think that the recording it 3 times so that you get all your little nuances and then you can put them all together in one video is, awesome, because that's why, retrain each time face to face when you can put it together like that. So I think that it did allow them to like see my step-by-step process and incorporated that so that they knew what my expectation was. They got really good at responding similarly to the way that I would respond to things. And I did at one point in time have somebody handling my calendar and my email. So I realized that that's actually one of the pieces of the chaos in my life that I am missing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Chapter 8, your perfect week. So I like this. The beginning part, it says, sometimes I play a little game with my coaching clients. It's a mini test disguised as a simple question. I'll text one of them and ask them if they have time for a quick call in the next hour. It helps me gauge whether they're reactively meeting the demands of the world around them or if they're proactively routing demands into their calendar. And then he gives the examples of like what a reactive and what a proactive coaching client would respond to. But what I really enjoyed is when he goes into talking about like him planning his calendar. And the first example he gives is on page 135. And he talks about someone putting into their calendar, like when they do their calendar for the week, that they're putting in like gaps in between each one of their appointments. So one of them might have a 15-minute gap, a 30-minute gap, and so on. And they will do that, calling it a buffer time. But what ends up happening is he says, in the example that he gives, he says, see all the gaps in there? There's a total of 90 minutes unaccounted for. And is anyone really getting anything productive done in 15 to 30-minute time slots? 90 minutes lost every day by 1:30 p.m. adds up, but the bigger issue is the drain that it puts on you. So he says, think about the energy lost. Coaching calls with employees demand one kind of headspace, and sales calls require another entirely different mentality. So every time you switch tasks, your brain has to switch focus. Some call this context switching. According to a research project, every time a worker switches between software applications, it takes them almost 10 minutes to get back to a high level of productivity. In another study, researchers noted that workers simply felt more productive when they didn't have to switch between their roles. So it says throughout an entire day, if you're switching too often, you're never able to get into that deep state of thinking where your mind is focused and ideas flow freely. And what I have noticed with that is like I've started working when I get my calendar and I'm working on it on Friday for the next week, I try to put the same like things together on my calendar. So for instance, like the beginning of this week, I needed to do my social media calendar for LU and Carmela for my real estate. For November, we do like a whole calendar a month in advance of like kind of what we're going to post. And then I also do that for our nonprofit. And in the past, I would almost like dread having to do it, and like I wouldn't do them at the same time. And so I almost had to like talk myself into it, and then I would rush and get it done. And what I found is if I do them back to back, I kind of get in the flow of things because I'm doing the same exact task just for two different genres, and it goes much quicker, and almost like I get into flow quicker and I get them done. So I've kind of worked on that where like if I'm just like following up and checking emails on like all three different of my platforms, if I do them back to back, it's almost like I'm more focused and I get them done quicker because I'm just batching and doing all those tasks together versus jumping back and forth. And he calls that task batching. So it's batching or scheduling similar tasks back to back, like Zoom calls with other Zoom calls, meetings with meetings, etc. And I feel like we've always been taught how important it is to multitask. And he gives the example on page 139 about the example that he gives everyone about write down the sentence, multitasking doesn't work. And then underneath it, now I really understand. And so when he asked the room to write down multitasking doesn't work, everyone finished it in about seven seconds. And then when he had them write each of the sentences and then go back and forth, writing the first letter of the first sentence, the first letter of the second, and back and forth. After 90 seconds, after 90 seconds, only half of the room was finished. And because they were bouncing back and forth between the sentences, it took everyone at least 6 times longer than it should have if they even finished it at all. Like, I think that's like a huge eye opener of like how multitasking doesn't really work. And so I've implemented a lot of this over the last couple of weeks with my team that says the next time you need to approve an ad campaign, ask that all ad campaigns for the next quarter get sent to you at once so that you can batch and review them all at once. So an example of this is I've asked my team, we're starting to work about 7 days ahead on all social media so that when they send them to me at the end of the day on Friday, by Monday, I review them all and it's for 7 days out. So we're constantly working ahead and I'm approving it all at one time versus pings and dings in my email for every single day to approve everyday things. That's been a huge help and very beneficial for me with like things that suck up my time. But then on page 145, he talks about engineering your perfect week. So here's a few tips on creating your own perfect week. Having a pre-planned weekly calendar is a must, but a perfect week is a bit of a misnomer. I don't anticipate you'll nail this the first time around. Likely it won't work well the first week or so, but if you continue, it should only take about 2 or 3 weeks before you start seeing massive results. The goal isn't to have a perfect week next week. The goal is to buy back time and energy this week, then adjust and keep on marching forward. Honor your perfect week. And that's when he talks about not putting buffer time between your tasks and batching your tasks together. And then the last tip is, oh no, there's a few more. It's about energy, not just time. So save time is small potatoes compared with the energy that it saved. Always remember that important work goes first. The key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So put your priorities in first and then schedule everything else around it. And then batch your work. I thought this was, I was kind of surprised at this. On page 147, he says, research shows that small business owners are wasting a lot of time. On average, about 22 hours a week we waste in time. They're performing tasks that others could have done for them, escaping to social media, sitting in inefficient meetings, etc. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with the 22 hours? I actually think it could possibly be higher.
I think it could possibly be higher looking at what I do, but yeah. I think one thing that jumped out to me was batch the time together. Like, if you're doing interviews or, social media or anything like that, just batch it together instead of trying to go throughout the day. Because he's right. When you shift from one thought to another, it does take time to get back into that groove. And I think that's one of the reasons that, like, when you're in the middle of a task, especially when it's an important task, like preparing for a listing appointment or, reviewing a CMA, something like that, and you get a ding or, your attention is drawn away, it does seem like it takes longer to get back into that mind frame.
Yeah, for sure. So I went through and did some more reflection questions and I broke it down for each chapter. So I will send that out to everyone with the recording. So there'll be just an attachment that has some questions. But some good ones for chapter. So it goes through, there's some good ones for the playbooks and there's some good ones for the other chapters as well. So I'll just include those in with the recording. But does anyone else have any comments? And then I think next week we are doing chapters 9 through 11, which is the only 4 time hacks you need, the test first hiring method, and then transformational leadership. This should be good. Ooh, like the first week we were an hour, and now we're down to like 30 minutes. All right. Well, have a great Friday, everyone. Enjoy the
Happy
beautiful
Friday.
weather. Happy Friday.
Have fun.
Thanks for joining me today.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.